On episode 8 of the Students of Storrs podcast, sponsored by Gansett Wraps, Alexa Philippou, UConn women's basketball beat writer at the Hartford Courant, joins me to talk about the recent WNBA Draft. I'm your host, Noah Mwatt. Thanks for tuning in again. Alexa, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, how are you doing? Where are you, and how are you staying busy right now?
I'm good. I'm actually home in Baltimore, Maryland, because the Current has been in a work from home situation for, oh gosh, it's been, I guess, 5 weeks now. So I figured might as well just be with my family who still lives here. This is where I grew up. But keeping busy, lots of basketball stuff with the draft, was happening last week. And now that a lot of my sports colleagues are helping out with the coronavirus coverage, I'm filling in just doing other kind of general assignment stuff in the meantime. So plenty to still write about, even though there's not sports somehow. So my days are pretty busy and trying to relax otherwise, just when I, get done with work every night.
Yeah, so it's funny. I've had a couple different people on working in sports media who have said that, this is typically one of the quieter times of the year for college writers. March Madness is done. Recruiting hasn't really heated up all that much. Summer practices haven't gotten underway, but people are doing so many different things. And it just shows how connected the world is nowadays, that even when there's no sports going on and we're stuck in our houses, we have so much content to produce, to write about, to talk about. So today we're going to talk all about the WNBA draft. Again, it was this past Friday. It was the first virtual draft of probably multiple in the coming months. So I want to start by asking you, what was it like covering the draft while just watching it on TV rather than being there, with players, WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert, reporters, all video calling in to make it happen?
Yeah, so this was interesting because this was actually my first draft experience since I'm new to the beat. So I don't have a frame of reference about how the WNBA draft usually works, but it was certainly interesting. I kind of had my own version of a war room set up where I was going to be actually, I have a TV in my room. So I was trying to watch. At first, I thought I was going to watch the draft in my room, and that way I could be at my desk and have my kind of my laptop situated to be ready to write and tweet. And then of course like my TV stream was behind, so then I had to find a different TV in the house, and I'm like running around. And besides that kind of like logistical tech issue, it wasn't that bad. It was a little interesting after the actual draft itself, just to get on the phone with different coaches and some of the players that we're able to talk to. That was very interesting. Probably would have been a little tough just to juggle on deadline anyway, because obviously the draft happened at 7, and then for print deadlines, you have to get something in early. But I made it through. I'll just say I'm happy to, hopefully next year we'll have this all in person. So it'll maybe be a little bit easier, a little less moving parts on that front. But it was just good to actually have a draft. It got me really excited for the WNBA season. I just really hope that there is a WNBA season. But that all remains to be seen.
Well, I'll tell you this, your first experience being a virtual one, that'll make the next one, cross your fingers it's in person, hopefully a lot easier. But yeah, I thought it went pretty well. Not too many technical glitches. Video quality was pretty good. It was kind of cool to see players in their houses, their natural reactions. Whereas if you're in the green room where the draft would take place in person, it's probably a little bit more staged, a little bit less natural. Maybe that you're getting picked beforehand, but here with a couple of second delay, you could really see some good raw reactions. It was a lot of fun. Now, as for the draft itself, before we do get into the UConn picks, which we will, I want to talk about the top of the draft board. No real surprises. Pick 1 through 3. Sabrina Ionescu goes 1 to New York, obviously. And then Satu Sabally 2 to Dallas, and Lauren Cox 3 to Indiana. Now, we did get to see all three of those players in Connecticut this year, Ionescu and Sabally, when Oregon handed UConn its worst ever loss at Gampel on February 3rd. And then Lauren Cox saw her last year in the Final Four, as well as the 2 from Oregon. But Lauren Cox when Baylor beat then number 1 UConn and Hartford in January. So what stood out to you from these 3 players? And was it surprising at all that they went 1, 2, 3?
So I definitely don't think it was surprising, the order that they went, and I would throw into Kennedy Carter, going to Atlanta. I think those 4, the lottery picks, that was pretty much what everyone expected. Sabrina obviously at 1 was like, I'm sure all the New York Liberty writers already had pre-written their stories on that one. But yeah, so that wasn't all surprising to me. What I love about, I mean, we'll talk about the Oregon players, I guess, to start. What I love about them is that if you talk, certain people, when you talk with them, as much as so much of the attention's on Sabrina, and rightfully so, so many people, and I actually saw this from Gino recently because he did one of those, like the detail, like ESPN Plus show. I haven't watched it yet, but he broke down both Sabrina and Satu Sabli's games, and he was saying how, I can't remember the exact phrasing, but basically that Satu is like the most impactful player in the draft. And I think you get that sense when you talk with just like the more and more people you talk to around the league, just how versatile she is, that she has, height, and she has a 3-point shot, and she can, she's good with the ball in her hands, and that she can just do so much with it. Sabrina obviously is in a lot of ways going to be the future of the league. It seems like, I think she's emerging as a new younger face to it from this draft class. So I'm really excited to see how she does too. I think it's going to be really interesting just because where she got drafted to has so many younger players. And they had just a really interesting draft in general that, I'm not necessarily doubting that she's going to, have a great pro career. But I think it'll be really interesting just to see how she fares as a rookie, when there's just so many different younger moving parts and not necessarily. I think that, the front office has a clear vision for how they work together, but it's a little bit not as clear on the outside. So that'll be interesting to see. And then Lauren, I think people are really excited to see how Lauren plays with Tierra McCowan in Indiana. She was going to be most likely the number 2 pick and go home to Dallas before Satu declared early. So it's going to be interesting to see her too and how she does. I think one of the things I heard just from talking with other people around the league was, it's a pretty top heavy class. So you have those 3, 4, if you want to put in Kennedy Carter too. The lottery picks have the potential to go in and make huge impacts on their teams right away. Not necessarily, I mean, if you look at it, New York and Atlanta and Indiana and Dallas, who knows if they're all going to be playoff contenders right away by any means. But I think the teams that did pick those players certainly have a lot of, reason to think that the future is bright in those, in their respective cities.
And a big move too for the Liberty. They're moving from White Plains, I believe, to Brooklyn, where they're going to play in Barclays Center. And getting that number 1 pick and having it be Sabrina Ionescu is going to be huge for their brand. Minutes after she was drafted, she announced her endorsement or her signing with Nike. Now, obviously, coming from Oregon, Phil Knight has his fingerprints all over that Oregon program. This has probably been a done deal for 3 or 4 years now. But it's going to be an opportunity for Ionescu to build her brand and for the Liberty to really transform their organization because they've been pretty weak the last handful of years. So going to be exciting there. Definitely great for Ionescu to go to a big city. But like you said, a young team, it's going to be a definite transition. Now, I do want to take a moment, quick advertisement, to remind you that Gansett Wraps is still open for business. Gansett is located at 12 Royce Circle in Storrs. They're offering curbside pickup as well as delivery service during the normal hours. So please consider supporting a local business during these hard times. For more information, head to www.gansett.wraps.com, check them out on Facebook, or download the Gansett Wraps app. Now, changing gears to the UConn players that were drafted. Now, you have an interesting role because you cover the Connecticut Sun during the WNBA season and also the UConn players. I do want to ask a little bit about when you were covering this WNBA draft, were you writing more for the Sun, more about the UConn players, or was it sort of a combination of both of them?
Oh God. It was it's funny because I texted my colleagues afterward, to my colleagues Alex Putterman and Sean McFarland, who, I was like, next year you guys need to help. One of you needs to help me because covering 2 teams. Well, it really felt like I was covering 4 players or 3 teams if you think of it as like Megan's team, Krystal's team, and the Sun. And it was a lot. I think under normal circumstances when we would have had more bodies, I would have had the extra help. But I guess like if you actually went back and looked at how I distributed my time, it was probably 60 to 70% UConn focused just because both, well, Megan was a first round draft pick. Krystal went early in the second, and the Sun, they were just kind of in store for a low key draft night. And that was pretty clear from, over actually like 2 months, for the last 2 months, because all of their, they like traded away all their first round draft picks. So they did. And it was actually kind of funny because I didn't even see when the second round draft picks like went up, like not the one that Krystal had, but like, I don't know, it was like the last maybe 4 or 5 when ESPN just like put them on the screen. Like
Yeah.
I was writing or something. So then I don't know how long, like how much time went by. And then I realized like the Sun had made their pick and I was like, oh crap, like Kyla Charles, like, okay. So that was interesting. I still ended up writing 2 stories off of it. And, I was able to talk with Kurt that night. So I was able to like, get his voice in the story and whatnot. But the UConn story was definitely longer. Mostly just because, it was a little bit more of a higher stakes thing for them. But, today I just got off the phone with Kyla Charles and Juicy Landrum. So I'll have a story out in the Sun tomorrow morning and, continue to cover them and, all the intricacies of how this season, if it, ends up happening, will work. So I'm really excited to see how that all pans out too.
So first year on the UConn beat, you said 60 to 70% of your coverage was focused on Megan Walker, Krystal Dangerfield. Obviously, UConn's historically dominated the WNBA draft, just as they've dominated women's college basketball for best part of 25 years now. So back in 2016, Brianna Stewart, Mariah Jefferson, Morgan Tuck went 1, 2, 3. Everybody knows that. The Huskies have 40 picks since the league's inception in 97. And this was the 13th straight year. Again, no surprise there that Gino Auriemma's team has had at least one player selected. But that being said, this was one of the more intriguing UConn women's basketball years in many seasons. There was no clear-cut alpha on the team, and it wasn't even until March 14th that UConn had 2 players to be drafted, which is when junior Megan Walker declared she forewent, I don't even know what the word is, her senior year, and she joined Krystal Dangerfield in the draft. So that was a Saturday right at the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic. And it was really news out of nowhere because the day before, Gino had said, I don't expect any surprises. I think everybody we expect to be back will be back. And then news broke that Megan Walker had declared. What did you think of that decision at the time?
Yeah, it was definitely pretty surprising because I think just in general, everyone, like, especially hearing it from Gino the day before, everyone just kind of expected that she'd come back to finish out her UConn career. She probably had the potential to be a National Player of the Year as a senior. She did obviously end up being a consensus All-American, so she was able to, finish her career with that high note too. But it's interesting because I think, reporting on UConn, you're definitely in a little bit of a bubble. So I felt like, I was hearing a lot of just like the UConn, like local reaction. But then when I started talking with more national people, and I actually had a great conversation with LaChina Robinson, who's an ESPN analyst, about Megan. That was kind of something I did in the lead up to the draft. And, she kind of said, well, I'm a little bit higher, on Megan's upside than maybe most, but she just said, Megan has, again, like a great upside. And, even talking with what the Liberty saw in her, it was clear that they saw that too. So, I'm not sure that's, maybe just people have different perspectives on it. Obviously, everything is subjective when you look at, draft prospects, but there is a lot of national excitement around Megan. And even if you look at her stats, I mean, she was the best 3-point shooter in the draft, if I'm not mistaken, or at least out of the players who went in the first round, I want to say. So that's obviously very appealing. She has, good size, a good body that, people can, when she actually gets to a team, she'll continue to kind of build that athleticism. She'll have to put in the work, obviously, too. And I think she knows that, just in the brief conversations the media have had with her, she knows that she still has a long way to go. But I think she's, she could position herself really well. And it seems like the Liberty they really wanted her from, the sense that I've gotten. I spoke briefly with their coach, and it seems like she'll fit in with what they're looking for, like the type of player they were looking to draft too. A bunch of like big wings basically who can shoot. So it'll be really interesting. And I'm kind of also on the frame of mind that, you and me and, every UConn fan and whatnot, like none of us know exactly what Megan's rationale was and what was like going on in her life. And she made the decision that she thought was best for her. And I think at the end of the day, we just, we can think, oh, maybe she should have stayed a year or not. But like at the end of the day, it was her decision, and she thought she made the decision that was best for her. So you kind of got to respect it. So she seemed really happy when she got drafted, and kept talking about how it was like her dream coming true. So we'll just have to see, how that all materializes moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she bet on herself. It paid off. First round draft pick, going to New York. Again, I talked about this earlier, a big market. And she was a terrific shooter her junior year, 45% from three. That's ridiculous. And
Yeah.
48% overall. And the jump from her sophomore year to her junior year was huge. Now, she did struggle in big games, Tennessee, Oregon, Baylor, South Carolina. Her shooting percentage was quite frankly pretty poor, but she's going to a situation where, like you said, a lot of wings surrounding the best player in the draft, and Sabrina Ionescu, who's one of the best passers, in college basketball history, over 1,000 assists in her career. Megan's going to get a ton of looks, and she's shown she can shoot the heck out of the ball. So that decision, it looks like it's going to pay off, and she's going to New York, which she said is where she wanted to end up. Now, another player who ended where they said they wanted to end up is Krystal Dangerfield. Now, she slipped into the second round, which I personally thought was a little bit surprising, but like you said, might be because we're in a bubble. Now, Krystal went 16th overall to the Lynx. Minnesota also had a first round pick. They had, I think, pick 6, which
Yep.
some people maybe had Dangerfield going that high. But she ended up falling, pick 16, second round, a great steal for Minnesota, and really what's going to be a good fit for Dangerfield, reuniting with Nafisa Collier, reigning Rookie of the Year from UConn, and a team, a culture in Minnesota that knows how to win, just like Krystal Dangerfield knows how to win at UConn. So what do you think about where Dangerfield ended up landing?
Well, soon as we got to, I want to say like I guess it was after Seattle didn't take her, I was like, okay, Cheryl Reeve's got to take her. Like, it just kind of felt like, I mean, Cheryl Reeve likes her UConn players. Cheryl had kind of talked about, she made it sound like when the media kind of talked with her before the draft, that I forget I think the way she framed it was that Ty Harris from South Carolina would probably go um, before Krystal. So then, I think most people were expecting maybe Minnesota to take Ty Harris, but instead they took her teammate from South Carolina, Kiki Herbert Harrigan. So then I guess Dallas ended up with Ty Harris. So then once all that kind of started to happen, and then it started to become clear, like, okay, maybe Cheryl's just hoping that Krystal doesn't go before their second round pick, and she wants to steal her there. And if that was her plan, it worked out great because they don't have a true point guard on that team. I think the idea has been floated, I guess, from Cheryl Reeve that they might do some sort of point guard by committee approach with Lexi Brown and Rachel Banham and maybe Shanice Johnson. But if Krystal can go in and kind of just hold steady, and she's going to be surrounded by a good amount of veteran players, then or even Nafisa, who isn't a veteran but showed that she can basically play very well and didn't play like a rookie last year, then it could be a really good situation for her. Obviously, she needs to go in, like make the official roster and prove herself. But Cheryl Reeve the other day, she couldn't really speak higher of UConn players. She said they're kind of plug and play players, like they're just so ready for the next level. And I think another thing working in Krystal's favor is we saw, especially maybe not this season, but the previous 2 seasons as a point guard, that she did well just being surrounded by high level players that she could just, distribute to. And she didn't have to do a lot of it herself like she did this year when she had to show up in some of those bigger games and actually help out with scoring. But I'm thinking in theory that would be closer to what her life would look like in the WNBA, because she's going to be surrounded by, again, like high level professional players. So she can just, do her job and be steady, not turn over the ball, and find her teammates on the floor. It could be a good situation for her. So it's really interesting to see how that turns out and how she'll be able to embrace that her rookie season.
So Dangerfield, one of the smaller players probably in the league, checks in only 5'5", but 15 points, 4 assists, just 2 turnovers per game. That's a pretty good, 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. That's pretty solid. Plug and play type player, just like Nafisa Collier, who in her second year will be as veteran as you can possibly be in your second year in the league. And those two are really close friends too, which will be a lot of fun to watch them, grow together as teammates and as really good friends from their time at UConn. So, Alex, I want to ask if you have any other major takeaways, be it about UConn in the WNBA draft this year, or just the draft as a whole, or the league as a whole going forward.
Oh God. Well, how much time do you
That
have?
was,
No.
that was very broad.
Um. Yeah. I think we covered most of the stuff. The Yukon players. One of my biggest takeaways from all this, um, I would just say, I was on a pre-draft kind of media call with the new commissioner, and she has a business background from, I think she was at Deloitte before, becoming the commissioner for the WNBA, and she kind of talked through a little bit of what their scenario planning around for the start of the 2020 season, if again that happens at all, and I don't know, maybe I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. It seems like other people in the media agree with me, but she's like she's pretty impressive, and I do think the WNBA is in pretty good hands with her because she wants it to she believes and wants it to succeed, as a business model, and she does also believe in like that. Yes, the product is great, and we can reach all these people with through women's basketball and the game itself. But it was just really interesting to hear from her, and we got a little bit of a sense with that from the WNBA finals because she was also there and she kind of spoke to the media then. But and I think she's handled the crisis pretty well. I thought she handled the draft really well. So I think WNBA fans, at least when it comes to how the commissioner is handling things, have a reason to be optimistic. Now there's a lot of external factors due to the coronavirus pandemic that we don't really know how that's going to affect the viability of the league or of certain franchises, so hopefully that doesn't materialize in a very negative way. Um, but at least for the league itself, hopefully, continue to be going on an upward trajectory. So that was kind of my big takeaway. I think a lot of people who were maybe tuning into the draft got to, see it from whether or not they were super familiar with it or, like a more of a newcomer might have been able to see, just a little glimpse of that, just seeing how Kathy and, the draft itself, even ESPN kind of handled the packaging of everything and put on what I thought was a, pretty good product.
Yeah, so a little bit about Engelbert. She was with Deloitte. You were right about that for 33 years, first female CEO from 2015 to 2019. And actually, a fun fact about her: she went to Lehigh, and while she was there, she tried out for the basketball team as a walk-on under Muffet McGraw. Yeah, the
Yep.
coach of Notre Dame, and Engelbert later became a team captain. So a little bit of a fun tabloid there. Now, looking forward towards next season, just very briefly, UConn has a ridiculous recruiting class coming in, led by Paige Beckers. Um, there's going to be a ridiculous amount of hype around her. She has nearly 500,000 followers on Instagram. She covered Slam. She's best friends with a bunch of players from the NBA. Az Fudd, who's the last year's National Gatorade Player of the Year. What sort of have you talked to Paige at all? What can you expect from her? Maybe she gets on campus this summer, maybe not with the virus, but what can UConn fans expect from the next generation?
That's the thing I keep like, not obviously in the grand scheme of like life with the coronavirus stuff, but I'm just like sitting here thinking like after all this hype, if like the 2020, 2021 season doesn't happen and like UConn fans don't get Paige Beckers, like something like it's going to be like I don't want to say a riot. That's a little bit kind of facetious, but it's just like, after all of that, it'd be kind of crazy if, that season's delayed because of all the hype. But in all seriousness, um, I mean, Paige, I've talked with her once. It was right after she was named Gatorade Player of the Year. She is, the hype is real, I think, and she's super media savvy. Like talking, she knew exactly how to kind of do the whole thing. Just talking with us, and I'm sure she talked with 50 other people that day.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
The biggest takeaway I have with Paige, and you hear it from Gino a lot, and my colleague Mike Anthony wrote a column about it when he went out to Minnesota to kind of see her in her element.
Unbelievable read. That was an unbelievable read.
Yeah, no, he crushed it with that one for sure. So if you haven't read it, listeners, please go and check it out. But yeah, the biggest takeaway I think from all of that is just, she's the only player. Okay, here's how to put in perspective. Gino once said at some point this season, the only freshman who came in was like automatically the best player in the country, best player in the team was like Maya Moore. Like Stewie had her ups and downs, Diana Taurasi had her ups and downs, like Sue Burke, all these players had their ups and downs. And the way that people, just because of, I think Paige kind of came about, not only do her, her skills and her flashiness of all her passes, like that kind of converges with this, social media age where she can go viral on Instagram and TikTok and Twitter on and all that. So she becomes this like huge superstar before she even steps foot on campus. I think she's gonna be great, and that's not just all this that I just said is not to diminish any of that, but there is a jump to be made from high school to college, and she's gonna probably have the target on her back because everyone knows how hyped she is. So Gino said it himself, like she's gonna have those challenges, like she's gonna have the ups and downs, and she's gonna be great. And they're probably, I wouldn't be shocked if they win multiple or maybe one national title with her. I know that's like really looking far ahead, but if she like shows up 5 games in the season or against, I don't know, her in her first big game and like lays an egg, then like if people kind of freak out over that, then they shouldn't. It takes time to get your feet to get kind of acclimated to the college game and to get adjusted to things in Storrs. So I just hope that fans have patience with that because I'm sure she's putting a lot of expectations on herself, and as is Gino and everyone else in her life that actually know her. And so hopefully fans can also kind of lay off a little bit if it and maybe I'm wrong, maybe she goes and is like the next Maya Moore. No, I'm kidding. Just everyone, I'm not saying tempered expectations, but just kind of understand that it's not going to be a finished product right away, I guess, if I could summarize it.
Right. But, great recruiting class. Paige, Aaliyah Edwards, Piath Gabriel, Mir McLean, Nika Mule, plus, Lavina Westbrook coming back after sitting out a year. You got Kristen Williams and Olivia Nelson-Ododa as juniors. Anna Macarat, Aubrey Griffin. They're going to have big summers probably developing their games at home. So a lot to look forward to. Let's pray for good health. Let's pray for sports coming back. Let's just hope that, by the time fall rolls around, things are a little bit more back to normal and we can have these conversations in person the next time rather than a couple 100 miles apart.
Yeah, for sure. Again, health and safety for everyone is, the utmost importance, not, basketball or sports and all that as much as we love them. So hopefully everyone just remains safe and healthy, social distancing, quarantining, washing their hands, all that good stuff. So we can actually get back to, all the good stuff.
Right. And while we're all at home, we do enjoy all the coverage that you and your team at the Hartford Courant are providing, especially as UConn fans. You guys are the top tier, and it feels like there's constantly a new story being put out from you and Mike Anthony and Alex Putterman and Dom Amore and Sean and just the whole team there. You guys do a great job, and I really appreciate you and Dom also last week for coming on to the podcast with UCTV Sports. You guys are really great assets to aspiring sports media members at UCTV. So thank you.
No problem. Thank you so much. And, happy to come on anytime.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. This was episode 8 of the Students of Storrs podcast, talking WNBA Draft and women's basketball with Alexa Philippou of the Hartford Courant. Next episode, not sure what we'll have yet, but it'll be something good for you all. So stay tuned. In the meantime, stay healthy, wash your hands, be well, everybody.